You're on 94.9. It is at 4:15. And of course, it's that time of the afternoon for Creation Ministries International. And this afternoon, we have Mark James over in New Zealand coming at us from CMI. Good afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon, Nick. How's it going?
Awesome. It's great to have you on the line. And of course, anyone, you're free to ask questions. Ask Mark questions simply by sending them through to our text line, 0401 949 949. Now, it's awesome to have you on the line, Mark, particularly because the other day I just happened to be reading a story, and it was a really interesting story about Kiwis. And of course, you're a Kiwi, but not only is that interesting that you're a Kiwi, you actually wrote the story. It's called The Kiwi Conservation Conundrum. Now, I found it interesting because, many times we've talked about the animals that were taken onto Noah's Ark. And, there was two of each kind. And, of course, these days we break the kinds up into lots of little pieces. And this story sort of, it touches on those little pieces.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting because it started for me when my wife and I were actually on holiday down in the South Island, and we were on a boat going out through the Marlborough Sounds, and our guide was telling us all about the conservation efforts in the area. And as we went past one of the islands, she sort of explained a situation that was a little bit embarrassing for the local conservationists. And basically what she said had happened is in a particular Kiwi sanctuary, the two different species of Kiwi had hybridized and produced some chicks. And when they discovered this, the Ministry of Primary Industries were a little bit concerned because they didn't want the Kiwis to be hybridizing. So they took the chicks that had been produced and they put them on this island in the middle of the Marlborough Sounds. And I think it was almost they wanted the problem to go away. So they put them onto an island that was, it wasn't predator-free, which is usually what they do with Kiwis. They'll put them into predator-free zones. But this particular island wasn't predator-free. And they put these hybrid Kiwis onto this island, and I think they kind of hoped that the problem would go away. But what they found was that the Kiwis actually thrived and started to produce more of these hybrid Kiwis, and that was just a little bit of a surprise to them.
Now, of course, this is a big problem because they say 100 years ago there was a population of several million Kiwis, and now there's about 70,000 birds left. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's talk about the possibility that Kiwis in the wild at some stage in the future will become extinct. So yes, it is a problem.
Wow, that's really sad. But okay, so there's two. Well, I mean, when we talk about kind, they're the same kind. They're two Kiwis, but because they look a little bit different, they're regarded as different species. Why is that a problem?
Okay. The issue, and you're right, it is, they're different species. And the definition of species is quite vague. And one of the definitions that they use is different versions, I suppose, of the same kind of animal that can't interbreed. And so the expectation was that these two different species of Kiwi, couldn't interbreed. Now, the definition of a species says they can't interbreed, but that can be a genetic thing, but it can also be a geographical issue. So, for instance, if one species of Kiwi is a long way away from another species of Kiwi, they're called separate species because they can't interbreed, because they're so far away from each other. These two Kiwi, I think it was the little spotted Kiwi and the roey Kiwi. And there was a Kiwi sanctuary on the west coast of the South Island. They had both Kiwis in that particular sanctuary. They were considered to be separate species. They didn't expect them to be able to interbreed, but they did interbreed. And I suppose the issue from this is that Kiwi numbers are reducing. And we should be doing, as part of the conservation effort, we should be doing everything we possibly can to keep the species going. And by having these separate, to keep the kiwi going, not the species, but the kiwi. And conservationists, when they come from an evolutionary sort of understanding, apparently they believe that kiwis had a common ancestor about 50 million years ago. And so these kiwi species have developed over 50 million years. And you can see that if that's the case, if these species have separated over 50 million years, then from a conservation point of view, they're looking at it and thinking, well, this is 50 million years of evolution, and I'm saying that with scare quotes, 50 million years of evolution. So when these species then breed back together, then you're undoing what they see as being evolution. And that's an issue for the evolutionists, I suppose. It's not an issue for us creationists, but it is an issue for the evolutionists.
Now, we've previously talked about things like Elephant Rock. They believe that, these arches in rock near the coastlines and all over the place, they sort of happen over millions of years. And then all of a sudden, we're watching them just in the last 100 years. They're caving in all over the place as though, erosion has somehow just sped up in the last few years. And, you guys, Creation Ministries International has made it quite apparent to us that type of erosion actually happens very quickly, not over millions of years. Now, we've seen the same sort of thing. They talk about, different species of dogs, for instance, a similar story to the kiwi, but then all of a sudden humans have gone, oh, well, we want to make one a little bit different, so we'll just tweak this and tweak that. And all of a sudden we've seen how quickly and easy we can create a new species of dog. Is that sort of correct?
Yeah, sort of. With dogs, they're not called different species.
Right.
They're subspecies. All dogs are considered to be the dog species, but we do get different breeds. So from a creationist perspective and from an evolutionary perspective, to be honest.
Well, what's the difference between a breed and a species?
Well, again, species, they say, and this is where it gets so vague. That's why the definition of species is quite difficult to sort of nail down. But if two dogs, for instance, could breed and produce offspring, then they would be considered to be the same species. Now, I know that a Great Dane and a Chihuahua are never going to be able to produce offspring, but how can I put this?
You'd end up with very angry Great Danes.
Yes. And very they bark a lot as well, wouldn't they? Yes. But I suppose the issue is that a Great Dane can probably breed with a dog that's closer to her in size, which can then breed with a dog that's closer to her its size, and the same thing could happen from the Chihuahua. Chihuahua could breed with a dog that's slightly bigger, that could then breed with a dog that's slightly bigger. So the definition of species, it doesn't really work in this situation. So dogs are considered to be a single species, but there are all these different breeds. And over the last probably 200-300 years, through breeding programs that humans have actually run, they've taken almost like a wolf-like animal, and they've ended up with so many different breeds of dogs. You've got your Chihuahuas, you've got your Great Danes, you've got your pug dogs, which some people think are beautiful and other people think are a little bit ugly. You've got your Shih Tzu with the Shar-Pei, which almost looks like it's a dog that's too small for the skin it's in. But they're all still dogs, but they are so different, and they're considered to be a single species. But the interesting thing is, all these dogs now seem, as we bred them to be these different breeds, they've started to have these genetic issues. So Alsatians, for instance, German Shepherds, they have problems with their spines, their backs, and these sorts of genetic issues are being found across the range of dogs. King Charles Spaniels have major problems because their brains, their skull is too small for the brain, apparently, so they get a lot of pain from that. What we do know, though, is that if we backbreed between these species, these breeds, if we have hybrids, mongrels basically, often the mongrels are much, much healthier than the purebred dogs. The reason for that is that you're breeding back in
those
the
genetic mutations.
Yeah, effectively, you're overriding those genetic mutations that are causing the problems by breeding different breeds together, and you get mongrels. And we know that mongrels are much healthier than the purebred species. And this is tough, and I'm sure there's dog breeders out there that might be listening at the moment. And I know that dog breeders who like a particular breed of dog want to maintain that breed and all the special characteristics of that breed. And I can understand that, but from a health of the dogs, often it's the mongrels that are healthier because they have a wider the genetic issues are they're not there anymore, I suppose, because of the way that the breeding happens.
Now, a lion and a tiger, are they different species?
They're different species, but they are the same created kind. In fact, lions and tigers can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. You can get ligers and you get tigons, and they're different names depending on whether it's a male tiger, female lion, or male lion, female tiger. But yes, tigers and lions can interbreed. They are separate species, but they can produce offspring. And creation.
So the whole theory, the whole species thing being unable to breed doesn't really fit a whole lot of different species.
It doesn't, but unless you sort of look at it from the point of view of the geographical isolation. And lions and tigers generally live in different environments, so they don't come together, so they don't breed, so they're considered to be separate species. That's the way it seems to work. But yes, it is very, very vague. Very vague.
Yes, all right. Well, look, it is 27 minutes past 4. We're going to go into a little break now. If you have any questions for Mark, please send them through. Just send them to our SMS line 0401 949 949. You're on 94.9. It's 22 minutes to 5. And we have Mark James on the line from New Zealand. Mark's with Creation Ministries International. And, we've been talking about kiwis. Yeah, the little birds, cute little birds that, of course, we all know about in New Zealand. And interestingly, remarkably, the New Zealanders, used to have millions of these birds all around the islands. Now there's only like 70,000 left. So, of course, they're protected. And New Zealanders are doing their best to try and bring the birds back. But Mark's been telling us about 2 different species of kiwi that have somehow interbred, which they're sort of not meant to be able to do, but they did. And there's an issue with this interbreeding. Yet, from a Christian perspective, we all know about all the animals on the ark. They were let in 2 by 2, and it was 2 of each kind. And those kinds then became all the species. But now the New Zealanders, it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, they've got a problem putting them back together again. Yeah,
and it's tough because from a conservation perspective, I mean, the conservationists do amazing work, Mick, and you have to be impressed with the work that is done. But you look at something like this, what's happening with kiwi, and to give you an idea, they reckon that kiwi numbers are reducing by as much as 2% every year.
Wow.
We're fewer than 70,000 birds left now. 100 years ago, there were several million of them. So the numbers are going down. And a lot of that is blamed on what we humans are doing. I mean, we're destroying their habitats. So we're part of the problem. And then we've got these conservationists that want to actually solve the problem. But if you come at the problem with the wrong understanding of where these different species of kiwi have come from, it can be a bit of a block. And that's what the article that I wrote was about. We know that hybridization between with dogs in particular, when we hybridize two different breeds of dog, the end result, the mongrel, is always healthier than the purebred dogs. And the same thing would happen if they crossbred the Kiwis. And to save the Kiwis, the most logical thing to do is there's 5 different species of Kiwi. They're all very similar.
Yep.
Mostly they're called different species because they're in different areas of the country. And they do have different features, but they are all Kiwis. They're all very similar. But all of these species of Kiwis are threatened. They're what conservationists would say. They're threatened species. They're not doing well. And because they have this, the long age evolutionists have this idea that these species have evolved from a common ancestor 50 million years ago, they don't want to then hybridize them because effectively they think that they're undoing 50 million years of evolution. And if you take that through to its logical conclusion, if you undo that 50 million years of evolution, you might even be preventing the arrival of some new kind of animal completely. I mean, this is the thinking that's driving the evolutionists.
Yeah.
So they don't want to hybridize back to crossbreed these species. They want to keep them as separate species, but in the process, they're tying their hands behind their backs in terms of the conservation effort.
They're actually losing some genetic information that they'll never get back.
Well, exactly. If one of those species were to go extinct, then all the genetic information in that species would be lost.
Yeah.
Whereas if they hybridize them, if they crossbreed them, then that genetic information will, hopefully anyway, be maintained. Now, will this stop the downward spiral? I don't know whether it would stop it, but it might at least delay it so that they have an opportunity to look at other conservation methods as well.
Wow.
But and the thing is, from a creationist perspective, from a biblical creationist perspective, we know that all these Kiwis, or the different species, have all come from a single pair of birds that were on the ark, and over time there's the variation within the DNA and separation. They've formed these different species, but it's only happened over the last 4,000 years rather than 50 million years.
Yeah.
And if you then look at it from that perspective, hybridizing them back together to maintain the genetics makes a lot more sense, and in the long run will be better for Kiwis than keeping all these separate species separate. And the interesting thing is that a lot of the conservationists now are starting, even the secular conservationists are now starting to realize that maybe this is something that they have to start looking at to conserve some of these endangered animals.
You mentioned during the break white rhinos.
Yes, yeah, and I think this is quite a good example. The northern white rhino, now there are only 2 northern white rhinos. So there's northern white rhinos and there's southern white rhinos.
Yep.
And they're considered to be 2 separate species. And the northern white rhino now, there are only 2 left, and they're both females. So basically, northern white rhinos are functionally they're extinct. And the conservationists have let it get to this situation. Now, I don't know whether they tried to actually breed the northern white rhinos with the southern white rhinos and it didn't work. I really don't know enough about it. But I don't want to see that sort of thing happen with the Kiwis because we have this mindset that we want to keep them as separate species, that we might lose a species because we don't want to crossbreed them.
Well, I've heard the same thing with fruits and vegetables. We've bred fruits and vegetables to, in many cases, to look better in the shop, not necessarily taste better. And some of the sort of originals, which were great tasting, plants, whatever you want to call it, they're not, like, we can't even get them anymore. You know, we've pretty much lost their seed, and we have the seed for these new good-looking ones, but we've actually lost information in doing what they're doing with fruits and veggies. That's a similar thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Probably the best example is bananas.
Yeah.
The banana that we all eat nowadays, I think it's Cavendish bananas.
Yep.
And they're saying that they've bred them to a point where they are very genetically, the bananas across the whole Cavendish range are genetically pretty much identical. What it does is it means that if they get a disease, then the whole lot are going to be wiped out.
Yeah.
Because there isn't enough genetic variability within the banana species for the species to survive if some disease comes along. And the people who like bananas, who know what's going on.
I'm one of them. I love them.
I love bananas too. So they're looking now at how can they start finding new species of banana to take over in case something does happen to the Cavendish bananas.
Wow.
And I'm sure it's happened with other vegetables and fruit. Yeah, we're very good at identifying properties within a fruit or a vegetable that we like, and breeding to encourage that particular feature that we like. But in the process, a lot of genetic information is also lost. And once that genetic information is lost, it's very hard to either breed it back. You have to breed it back from other stock, or that's the only way of doing it. Once it's lost completely, it's gone.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's remarkable. Well, I certainly hope that they can put their thinking caps on when it comes to these kiwis and decide that, you know, this new so-called species or hybrid is actually a good idea, because I can certainly see your point of view, and I can see why there's two different sort of thought patterns when it comes to how do we fix this problem. But of course, it makes sense to me that by adding the genetic information back that may be missing is only a good thing.
Yeah, and if a species is on the verge of extinction, surely it makes sense that we do everything we can to preserve the genetic variety before it's lost. Yeah. And if that means hybridizing these kiwi, and we end up back with just one species of kiwi that's got as much genetic information as as we can get into it, then hopefully that will mean that the species, the kiwi, will continue on for longer, if not forever, but at least for longer. Yeah.
Well, I mean, nothing's going to continue forever. The whole Earth number one is going, but yeah, hopefully everyone's got a ticket to Earth number two.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yes. Now, your how's the fundraising that you're doing at the moment? Hey, I just want to give you a big shout out. Big shout out from Creation Ministries. You guys are amazing, and your audience needs to support you.
Thank you. We're up at the $78,000 mark. The official appeal has finished, but of course, this year we did our appeal a little bit earlier than we've done it before. Normally it's done in June, of course, because people are coming up to tax season at the end of June. They go, okay, now's the time. We sort of did it a little bit early, and we sort of get that there'll be people that will still wait until later in this month. So, yeah, those numbers have been coming up a little bit, but it's awesome to see. We're up at about the 78. Our target was 150. So, yeah, who knows? We might get closer in the next couple of weeks.
Now, you know what? From over here in New Zealand, I just pray that your listeners will take up the challenge, and that you'll hit that $150,000 easily.
Thank you so much, Mark. Well, look, we've come to the end of another awesome week, and Mark James was only with us for 1 week this time. Oh, Mark, we're going to have to try and get you for 2 next time round. because, of course, there's already questions in my head, and I'm sure there's other people probably thinking of things as well. But we've got you back again, I think, around the 23rd of July. Oh, no, hang on.
I'm November.
Oh, you are too. You're the 5th of November. There we go. You are the 5th of November. So it'll be a little while. And I hope you have an awesome time between now and then. Talk to lots of New Zealanders about Creation Ministries, and who knows, maybe next time round. I was sort of hoping, if we had time today, and we didn't, to ask you a few questions about some of your talks, particularly questions about the questions that you get asked. So maybe we can carry that on next time.
All right, and maybe we can weave Guy Fawkes into it.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
November the 5th?
Yep.
Do you celebrate Guy Fawkes over there?
Not really, no.
Oh, you don't? Okay, all right.
No, that's like cracker night for you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we used
November
to sort of... Well, our cracker night was the weekend we've just had. It was sort of the Queen's birthday, but we're not allowed to have crackers anymore. No worries.
No.
All right, well, thank you, Mark.
All right, sir.
We appreciate having you. It is 9 minutes to 5.